Hello, my name is Allison Carmen, and welcome to my podcast, 10 Minutes to Less Suffering. And the name of today's podcast is How to Care, Act, and Speak Without Losing Yourself. Today, I want to talk about coherence and how we move through the world. I'm talking about coherence as a way of moving through life where what we believe, what we feel, and how we act are not working against each other. And the reason why this is important is all of us are engaged in life. We all have responsibilities. We all have people we love. We all have values that we want to live by. And sometimes the way we move through our days requires us to make choices that are not simple. And because of these complexities, we become fragmented. Different parts of us are pulling in different directions when we make a decision or when we're trying to act. One part of us could want to help. Another part of us could be tired. Another part of us could be frustrated. Another part of us might want to protect time for creativity, rest, or quiet. And instead of acknowledging all of it, we act as if only one part of us exists. So we move forward, but we're not actually moving as a whole. And what's so interesting is I noticed this yesterday in my own life. I woke up in the morning knowing I wanted to write and record this podcast. I had already decided that this was not going to be a day I worked at my company job. I wanted space to create. I wanted the quiet. I wanted the time. And then the CEO of the company, who happens to be a very dear friend of mine, reached out and she needed help. I knew right away what the choice would cost me. I knew I would be tired afterwards. I knew I probably wouldn't have the energy to write or create the way I had hoped. I knew I might feel frustrated, and that could be a little moody at times during the day. But I made the conscious decision early in the day to help. She was struggling, and she really needed help thinking a few things through. And even though it wasn't my job responsibility, I chose to show up. I stayed present. I helped her work through the situation. And I know that in doing so, I likely saved her a great deal of stress and maybe even some sleepless nights. Did I feel completely whole afterwards? Not quite. I felt tired, and I felt a little sad that I didn't get to put all that great energy towards my creative work. And I could feel the cost of the choice. But I was not resentful. I wasn't resentful because I had seen the choice clearly. I acknowledged the consequences. I hadn't pretended it wouldn't affect me. I chose it with awareness, and that changed how I experienced it. When we see the cost and still choose based on our values, our ethics, our love, our responsibility, we are not victims of our choices. We are participants in them. Awareness does not make us fully coherent. It doesn't remove all our inner conflicts, but it does make us less fragmented. And that matters because we show up in the world more whole. And because awareness allows us to soften the experience, even on that day, I met myself with small moments of care. I made sure I had a nice lunch. I let myself do one little Instagram post. I played music. I checked in with my parents. So through the day, I knew I was going to feel fragmented. So I gave myself a little more self-love and care, so I felt better throughout the day. I know they were small things, but they mattered. There were ways of saying that, Allison, I see you in this. Again, they didn't erase the exhaustion, they softened it. And it reminded me that even when I choose something hard, I don't have to disappear inside that choice. And that's the practice, that's the balancing act. Not living as a victim of our responsibilities and not pretending we're always whole, but staying aware of when we feel more coherent, what makes us feel more coherent, and when we feel more fragmented, and choosing it with complete honesty. You could see coherence or the absence of it in everyday moments. When we lose coherence, urgency tends to take over. Everything feels immediate. Everything feels personal. And in that urgency, we often say or do things that don't actually reflect who we want to be. Think about it. You say yes and you become completely exhausted and resentful to your partner or to your child or your sibling. You're overworked, you're at a meeting, you become irritable, you snap. It could happen anytime in any place, but if we get to know ourselves better and make choices how we move throughout the world and we know before we act, will this make me more coherent in the world or less? And if I'm going to choose this, why am I choosing it? And what is the cost to me? It does change everything. Sometimes we will be fully coherent. We will say no. And sometimes our love for our parents or our obligations at work, we will say yes. But if you have that awareness, less things will be pulling you in different directions, and you will show up more calm, more whole, more steady, more clarity, and you will make better choices. Moving through life without coherence leads to exhaustion, recurring conflict, and a quiet sense of self-betrayal. Moving with coherence tends to build trust quietly. You can repair situations with people more easily because we feel less divided inside, even when situations are challenging. Sometimes coherence looks like showing up for someone else. Sometimes it looks like setting a boundary. Sometimes it looks like returning an email the next day or not working on the weekend. We see our path, we see what supports our wholeness, and we choose differently at different times. And what really matters most is that we are conscious of the choice. So I'm going to offer you a simple reflection that perhaps you might turn to before you act, speak, help, or step into something that matters to you. You don't need to close your eyes or catch your breath. You just need to pause a moment. Bring to mind something you're about to do or something you recently did that mattered, and ask yourself gently, what am I choosing and why? Now notice what it's costing you. Don't judge it, but acknowledge it. Again, you agree to drive your parents someplace when you haven't slept for a couple of nights. You agree to watch your sister's children when you have work to do. You make a decision like I did. You work on a day that you wanted to do something else. Whatever choice you make, for whatever reason you make it, that is up to you. But if you say, what am I choosing and why? You get to really look at how the choice will either bring you wholeness or will fragment you. And knowing, again, awareness is important. And then you get to ask yourself, am I choosing this as a victim or as a participant? Am I choosing it because I actually want to help, even though it has a cost to me? Or maybe it gives me more wholeness? Or am I not owning my life? Am I not owning my decisions? And if you're choosing something that fragments you on some level, but you're choosing it for love, you're choosing it for responsibility or commitment, then also ask yourself, what would help me soften this experience even a little? Could be something small, a good meal, a kind conversation, music, I'll rest later, asking for help, setting a boundary next time. Again, awareness doesn't make it easy, but it helps us stay in relationship with ourselves as we move through our lives. Sometimes the outside world becomes so demanding, we lose the relationship we have with ourselves. Everything is outside what the world demands of us, what people demand of us, because we're trying to be like, we're trying to succeed, we're trying to get by, we're trying to function in a world that will always demand things of us. But if we lose the relationship with ourselves, we will constantly feel chaotic. We will have all these different emotions, and we will be fragmented every bit of the way. Because when you get overtired and you get overstressed and you're not looking at your needs and you're not looking at your wholeness, you're not going to behave as balanced in a meeting, and you're not going to be the best possible version of yourself in a relationship, and you're not going to be your most creative self or your most joyous self. So the priority is staying in relationship with ourselves as we move through our lives. That is where your sturdiness comes from, is understanding yourself, understanding your needs. How will I move through this life is knowing the cost of your actions or the wholeness towards your actions, whatever it might be. Because over time, that is what really matters. We reduce resentment, we reduce harm, and it helps us live with honesty and care even when the moment is demanding. And with such great awareness, we will choose better for ourselves in the days to come. Life is a balancing act. It always will be. But the more balanced we are is knowing ourselves and knowing what fills us up and knowing what fragments us and knowing what makes us emotional and knowing what gives us anxiety and knowing how we could feel balanced. And as we gain awareness towards that, our decisions will be better. Our awareness will grow. We matter in our lives. And when we matter, more things become okay. And when we matter, we figure things out. And when we matter, life becomes more magical. And when we matter, we are more open to the possibilities of what tomorrow could bring. Because for all we know, maybe the best is yet to come. Thank you for listening to this podcast today. If you'd like to get in touch with me, you could email me at allison@allisoncarmen.com. If you'd like to buy my books, The Gift of Maybe, A Year Without Men, Maybe Everything's Okay, A Parent's Guide to Less Stress and Worry, you can find them at all major bookstores and online retailers. If you'd like to buy my Maybe cards or my Maybe digital journal, they're available on Etsy and my Stan store. And most of all, if you like this podcast, I hope you subscribe and leave a comment.